my name is Ian Scott. I'm a Toronto-based opera lecturer and tour guide, and it was my great fortune and privilege to be a friend of Father Owen Lee for the last 45 years of his life. His voice is so well known to millions of people around the world, but his video legacy is much more limited. So in 2012, between Christmas and New Year, a quiet time, over 2 days, I took a camera down to his residence and we conducted this set of interviews. He was 82 at the time. In this introductory interview, I asked him about his background. First, about his set of brothers in the city of Detroit in the Depression, and then the other set of brothers with whom he lived for the rest of his life, the Basilian priests in the Order of St. Basil, Catholic order. And with them and through them, he taught at the University of Toronto for most of his career. This section of the interviews concludes with an anecdote about his surviving, thankfully, a heart attack in 2012. Father Lee. Okay, which of your parents do you most resemble?
Well, they said about Wagner that from the front he looked like a Faust, but from the side he looked like a Mephistopheles. And I have an Irish face, squashed in, pug nose, Jimmy Cagney, that was my Irish dad. And I have a German profile. My mother, my dad tells me, used to look like, well, she always did look like Greta Garbo. In any case, he was from Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and he moved to Detroit to make automobiles and make his fortune. And he married a farm girl from Ionia, Michigan, halfway up the state, who may or may not have completed 8th grade. I was the second of 5 boys.
Tell me about your brothers.
Well, we were 5 distinct types, 5 different facets of my father's personality. My older brother John, who recently died, was crazy about sports, and so I, needless to say, sibling rivalry, had to be interested in something else. And from an early age, of course, I was interested in music. John and I used to go to the movies a lot, but he'd much rather be at the high school, at Briggs Stadium or the Olympia, watching football or hockey. And then Robert E. Lee, the next one after me, was not very good at school. My dad told him he couldn't go to Catholic Central High School like my older brother and me because he wasn't smart enough. And he went to a trade school, which ironically is now run by us Basilian priests who ran Catholic Central. We run both schools now. The trade school is a new experiment in education where the kids work 2 days of the week to pay for their own education. And my brother learned to trade there. And so he always worked with his hands. That was Robert E. Lee. Vincent, the fourth, was interested only in girls and was the first one married and made more money than all the rest of us put together. And Matthew, the youngest, was an afterthought. When I left home at 17, Matthew was 3 years old. And I can still remember my mother saying to him, holding him in her arms as I got on the boat to Buffalo, say goodbye to Owen, he's going away for a long time. Well, I don't know, I suppose in any Irish Catholic family, which at least partly we were, it's expected that one of the sons become a priest. And I guess I was the most bookish, but not the most devout. In any case, I thought about the idea through high school, and through grade school and high school, with the nuns and then with the priests. And I was so pleased by the priests who taught me at Catholic Central in Detroit. They were so happy with their work. They were so good at what they did, and I thought if I had to be a priest, I wanted to be a teaching priest. So I joined the Basilian Fathers, and at age 17 left home for good and went to the Basilian Novitiate in Rochester, New York, which was possibly the happiest year of my life, because I was with 12 other guys. We went in 13, but we came out a year later, the 12 apostles, and we all had similar aims, similar dreams, and except for two older fellows, one of whom was an ex-soldier and the other an ex-sailor in World War II, we stayed together through a lot of our theology and university training. In Toronto for my undergraduate training, went through honor classics at the University of Toronto, graduated summa cum laude, as I recall, and then was sent to teach for high school part-time here in Toronto at St. Michael's College School while taking first-year theology. And then, because they weren't quite sure of me, they sent me to Texas to teach for another year full-time in our high school in Houston, St. Thomas High School. A very enjoyable year, where I actually saw 2 Metropolitan Opera performances without my Superior General's permission when they came through Houston. I saw Jan Pierce and Licia Albanese in La Boheme, and Dorothy Kirsten and Eugene Conley in La Traviata. It was wonderful. And then I came back to Toronto to complete my theology and be ordained, and they decided, to get an MA in classics. And they decided that I probably should go to PhD, to get to do my PhD in Vancouver, the University of British Columbia, because Father Carr, who had founded the Institute of Medieval Studies here in Toronto, thought it would be a good idea for us to have an Institute of Patristic Studies in Vancouver, and so a classics man should go out there. And I didn't much like it. I got my PhD in 2 years, probably a record time, and came back to Toronto to teach for 8 years in the Department of Classics, until I got an invitation to go back to Houston and teach at the University of St. Thomas. At the invitation of Madame de Menil and her husband Jean. He was a Parisian and she was a Rhinelander named Schlumberger. Schlumberger, as their stock was called, was the 8th richest stock in the United States, and they had a lot of money. And he wanted to establish a classics department on the campus of the little University of St. Thomas, and then turn it into Schlumberger or de Menil University, and present it as a gift to his wife, Madame de Menil. And none of us complained too much because everybody who knew Madame de Menil was always at least a little bit in love with her. But the situation exploded, and after a few years enjoying myself in Texas, relaxing, teaching anything I felt like teaching, and going to a lot of opera, I went to Chicago and taught there for 2 years at the invitation of the Jesuit fathers, who said they wanted something different, that I was not in the Jesuit mold. And after 2 years teaching for them there in Chicago, I accepted their invitation to go to teach at Loyola University of Chicago, Rome campus. And I had a wonderful year in Rome, seeing, I think, 154 operas, about one every 2 days, 2 or 3 days. And that might be the second most enjoyable year of my life. But in the end, my Superior General had other ideas about me, and I was invited back to Toronto, where I taught in the classics department. Off and on, I guess I taught for 35 years, and about 17 of them in Toronto.
People are always asking me, how is Father Lee these days? How are you?
Well, I just survived a heart attack, but after several months in rehab, I'm actually feeling pretty good. There's a lovely, big, motherly Serbian nurse on the floor here who spotted it as a heart attack in progress immediately and stuffed my mouth full of crushed aspirin and called the cardiac unit at the nearest hospital, and I'm told had me on the operating table within 10 minutes. All I really remember is when they were wheeling me out on my way to the hospital, the paramedic asked me, how long have you been ordained, Father? And I, in a panic, said, I can't do the math.